Thing. All right, guys, I think the rules are clear. And we have 5 participants, 2 for the motion and 3 for against the motion. So please switch on your cameras, everyone. Then only we'll be able to start. Mayank, Rajveer, Kunika.
Ma'am, I won't be able to turn on my cameras due to some personal reason. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. Gunika. Mayank.
Ma'am, if I turn on my camera, it will consume more internet. So I
Okay,
don't have
Gunika.
Wi-Fi at my home.
Okay, Mayank, no problem. So we'll be starting with who wants to start, Arunima or who was the other one who said
Mm,
for the
yeah.
motion?
Ma'am, me.
Okay, then we'll just start with Arunima and then all right, if we have like somewhat equal both the stands, so we'll do Arunima, then someone from the opposition, then we'll do questionnaire, then we'll do Rajvi, then someone from the opposition, then we'll do a questionnaire, and then in the end, the remaining person, we'll just do the opposition, and then the questionnaire for that specific speech. All right?
Okay. Ma'am, one question. Can I ask question to like everyone
Yeah, from
from
your
the
stance
against?
also and from the opposition also, you can ask questions.
Okay,
From
so
my
it's
stance
individual
also.
based.
Yeah?
So it's individual based.
Yeah, individual based.
All right.
Okay, we'll
For
start
my
with,
stance also.
yeah, if you want to ask a question, if you are feeling that you want to question what they're saying, then you may.
Okay.
Okay, I'll just
Okay,
put
so
a timer. All
I'll begin in the self count of 3, 2, 1. A boy wasn't born a terrorist. He was born a son until the day we dropped freedom from the sky. Esteemed panel, I stand to assert that the war on terror creates more terrorists than it stops, and I will prove it. Since 2001, this war has cost over 4.5 million lives, displaced 38 million people, and drained $8 trillion. That's a funeral every 2 minutes. Yet we call them collateral damage. This war didn't end terrorism, it globalized it. Bombs dropped in neighborhoods become recruitment posters. A 2010 NBR study found that every civilian casualty in Afghanistan led to more insurgent attacks. Drone strikes killed hundreds in Pakistan and Yemen. They don't stop terror, they fuel rage. On April 22nd, 2025, in Pahalgam, Kashmir, 26 civilians were executed by the resistance front. A tragedy mirroring past massacres, 15 years apart. My opposition, 15 years apart. Same cycle. The war creates the very enemies it claims to destroy. Former Al Qaeda spokesman Adam Godon once said that the US drone strikes were the most effective recruiting tool they had ever seen. Imagine. The very tactic meant to destroy them is the weapon they thank us for. If our war strategies are celebrated in the enemy's war room, then whose side is it truly on? The opposition may say, we have killed leaders, spoiled plots. True. But every head removed spawns more. From Al Qaeda to ISIS to ISIS-K. Terrorism evolves. You cannot kill an idea with a missile. It grows where injustice grows. From Boko Haram in Nigeria to Tamil Tigers to the white supremacist networks in the West. Terror feeds on silence, exclusion, and trauma. Yes, some attacks were stopped. But if more rise, that is not victory. War lit this fire. Only justice, education, and healing can end it. Let me return to that boy who waited for help. Instead, he got a gun and a promise your pain is your power. A son turned into a terrorist by us. That's not strength, that is surrender, and we must not surrender ever again. Thank you.
All right, Arunima, that was an excellent speech. The floor is open for questions. You guys can go ahead, unmute
Ma'am,
yourself.
can't we have the question and answers round at the end after all of our speeches so that we could actually hear everyone's speeches and then ask proper POs?
Yes,
Should
ma'am,
Would that be possible?
we do this that for the motion and then against the motion, then question for those two specific people?
No, ma'am, we will first finish the for and
Yeah,
then the against speeches,
ma'am,
and then we will do with the
either way
question and
works.
answer round. Open for all.
Okay, if you guys want to do it like that, all right, we'll do this. So now the next speaker, please unmute yourself, Rajveer.
Ma'am, is it me?
Yeah, we are doing for the motion, as you guys said, all the for the speakers and then all the against speakers.
Ma'am, can we go for, against, like that?
Yes, ma'am, we were doing that, right?
Okay, I just
Yes.
thought that you guys are
Sorry,
suggesting
ma'am, to
that.
just amend the format a lot of times. Sorry, ma'am.
Okay, no problem. Then who wants to go against Arunima for this motion?
I can go.
All right. You can start whenever you want.
All right. On a self count of 3, 2, 1, start. So, uh, to all of the arguments made by the proposition, the only point I will reiterate in various forms is that what is the alternative anyway? To let these dogmatic ideologies uh, uh, take over the world and allow for the propagation of terror in its various ways and an absolute dystopia. The point proposition would make is that the operations against ter- terrorism lead to civilian casualties is a misinformed claim, where the rate of militant to civilian ratio has decreased by a whopping 60%. And these groups intentionally hide in civilian areas to gain sympathy, so blaming our forces would be incorrect. And using the cherry picked argument of the insurgency of ISIS in Syria would be batting a blind eye to the um, other successful campaigns like Operation Neptune Sphere, Global Coalition Against ISIS, and Indonesia de radicalization programs, etc. And as far as the radicalization fueled by the us versus them argument is concerned, this is another misinformed claim because the European Commission found 80% of the youth were radicalized by online misinformation and not actual experiences, and making the war against this evil something which is promoting Islamophobia is foolishness of utter order because it safeguards the rights of Muslim civilians more than anybody, like protecting the Yazidis from ISIS and supporting Afghan women's rights. While there are definitely political motives behind many of these steps attempted, we cannot uh, deny that another 9/11 has not taken place in the last 2 decades, which is, in my opinion, a major success. Thank you.
All right. Uh, okay, thank you for that speech. Shiv has just joined, I think. Okay, he left. All right, now we'll go to Rajveer.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, whenever you're ready.
I will count. I will start on the self count of 3, 2, 1. The war on terror, though launched with the promise of protecting innocent lives and dismantling extremist networks, has tragically evolved into a force that often fuels the very violence it seeks to prevent. In countless regions, military operations have left behind scorched homes, broken families, and communities shattered by airstrikes, raids, and occupation. These are not these are not isolated incidents. They are daily realities for people caught in crossfire, living in fear. Civilian casualties are not just tragic statistics, they are deeply personal losses that breed anger, humiliation, and a thirst for justice. For those who survive, the message is clear. Their lives are expendable. Their, dig- their dignity, their dignity negotiable. Foreign troops patrolling streets, enforcing curfews, and detaining suspects without trial are seen not as liberators but as invaders. The psychological toll of living under constant surveillance and threat creates fertile ground for radicalization. Extremist Extremist groups exploit this pain, offering identity, belonging, and revenge to those who feel voiceless and violated. Every drone strike that misses its mark, every checkpoint that humiliates, every image of abuse or torture deepens the divide, turning pain into fractured society, into the purpose for seeking to fight back. And when war dismantles governments and fractured societies, terror groups step into the void, gaining, gaining territory, weapons, and unnecessarily out of ideology, but out of grief, rage, and desperation. The war on terror doesn't just fail to eliminate terrorism, it multiplies it, transforming battlefields into breeding grounds and victims into future threats. If we are truly committed to peace and security, we must stop fueling the fire and begin addressing the roots of radicalization, injustice, humiliation, and hopelessness. Only then we can break the cycle and build a future where terror no longer finds fertile soil and peace is earned through dignity and understanding. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Rajveer. That was a very great speech. Who wants to go against Rajveer?
I'm here.
All right, whenever you are ready.
I'm audible, right? Yes.
Yeah, you are audible.
Yeah, ma'am, I'll start on my self count of 3, 2, 1. Ma'am, we need to understand right on the burden of this motion itself as two clear very parts that we need to focus upon. First is war on terror. Second is whether it creates more terrorists or stops them. And ma'am, the entire debate should be focused upon this rather than going into different aspects and different directions. Now, ma'am, talking about war on terror itself, we need to understand that this is not just about something that started yesterday or few years back. This has been going on for a very long time, and ma'am, the structure and the approach that has been taken to deal with terrorism has changed multiple times. It has evolved, and therefore, ma'am, when we talk about war on terror creating terrorists, we are making a very simple argument that is not considering the real situation on the ground itself. Now, ma'am, directly coming to the opposition's argument itself, the opposition tried to address that war on terror creates more terrorists. But, ma'am, what they are forgetting is that terrorism itself is a threat. It is an immediate threat, it is an existing threat, and therefore, ma'am, if we are not responding to it, if we are not taking action against it, then we are allowing this threat to grow on its own. We are allowing terrorists to operate freely without any resistance whatsoever. Now, ma'am, second argument that was presented by the opposition was that military operations and counter-terrorism efforts end up brainwashing more people. But, ma'am, we need to understand one basic thing here. If terrorists are being stopped, if they are being arrested, if they are being contained, then they cannot go out and recruit more people. They cannot spread their ideology. They cannot conduct attacks. So, ma'am, the very basic ability of these groups to do anything is being limited by counter-terrorism. And ma'am, also the opposition also argued about how civilian casualties might lead to more hatred and more terrorism. But, ma'am, we need to understand that when we are using proper military operations, when we are using intelligence-led operations, when we are using trained forces, the collateral damage is itself being minimized. And therefore, ma'am, this argument itself is falling apart because proper counter-terrorism not is as same as indiscriminate violence. Another thing that the opposition was talking about was that we should not be fighting terrorism with military force at all. But, ma'am, this is a very naive approach. This is very unrealistic approach, because when you have armed groups who are committing attacks, who are killing people, who are threatening peace and security, you cannot just talk to them or negotiate it with them when they are actively conducting operations against civilians. Now, ma'am, wrapping up with the last argument from the opposition, they also try to suggest that all of these counter-terrorism efforts are useless and they don't work. But, ma'am, basic logic itself tell us that if terrorists are being hunted down, if their operations are being disrupted, if their leaders are being removed from their field, then their ability to function as an organization itself is being damaged. And therefore, ma'am, the motion itself falls apart because it assumes that doing nothing is better than doing something. So, ma'am, my stance is clear that war on terror does not create more terrorists than it stops. It is necessary, it is essential, and the debate should be focused upon how we could do it better, not whether we should do it at all. Thank you, ma'am.
All right, thank you. That was a great argument. Next up, we have another speaker for the opposition.
It is me.
Yeah,
What is the time? 2.5 minutes or 2
it's 3 minutes.
Oh, okay. So I would like to start on the back count of 3, 2, 1. Good evening, everyone. Let me at first define terrorism. Terrorism is the calculated use of violence and intimidation to create fear and achieve political, religious, or ideological goals. It involves acts intended to influence governments or population through violence, non-combat again, such as causing deaths, injury, or taking hostages. According to think tank or intelligence summary, how effective are the post 9/11 US counterterrorism by A. Goulet assess war effectiveness of post 9/11 counterterrorism. I have come up with 4 points that prove my stand. Point number one is destruction of terrorist organizations. The war on terror has eliminated key leaders, the primary being Osama bin Laden. It has dismantled financial networks, destroyed training camps, and reduced safe havens in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. Without these operations, extremist organizations would hold far more territory, resources, and global reach. My point number two is terrorism thrives when states fail and not when states intervene. When the war on terror stopped, ISIS built caliphate across Syria and Iraq. Al Qaeda affiliates grew in ungoverned spaces. Military intervention limits the breeding grounds where terrorist groups emerge and expand. My point number third is preventing recruitment by eliminating extremist role models. When high profile terrorists are killed or captured, their mythic hero dies, their organizational coherence collapses, their propaganda loses credibility. It becomes harder for groups to attract followers when they repeatedly lose leaders and battles. My last and fourth point is civilian protection and human rights advances. Counterterrorism funding has enabled protection of local population from extremist violence, education campaigns against radicalization, legal frameworks to prosecute terror safely and fairly. For millions of civilians, the primary threat is terrorists, not counter-terrorism and forces. And so that was the
Okay, thank you, Mayank. Before we move forward, I just want to tell everyone that this Zoom meeting might end because of the 40-minute time bound. But if you're not done with the conversation, you guys can just join back in. I'll send a link on the group. All right, so now we are open for questions. You can just ask anyone you want to.
Can I begin?
Yes, Rajveer, whom do you want to ask the question to?
I want to ask to the opposition.
All right.
Okay, so my question is, um, if the war on terror is meant to reduce terrorism, why has global terrorism increased in regions where military interventions occurred?
I can answer that.
Yes, Anak.
Uh, uh, Ajveer, I think you are a bit misinformed about it. The only place where the civil unrest increased for a partial amount of time was in Syria, and it was the political instability was extremely brief. And the irony is that after that brief period of political instability, the 90% of the terrorist activities and organizations were eradicated from the nation. So it hasn't increased elsewhere, or there have been no instances as well where it has insurged. So yeah.
Rajveer,
Ma'am,
Can I?
ma'am, would that be possible if I add something?
yeah, of course.
I'm sorry, ma'am. There is some like what teacher or something going on, so please just ignore the background voice. I can't do anything regarding that. But yeah, regarding the answer, ma'am, the opposition is clearly cherry picking facts here. They are looking at specific cases, ma'am, wherein organizations adapted and regrouped, right? But ma'am, that does not clearly mean that military operations were not effective, ma'am. In many cases, these organizations became weaker, lost territory, lost their leadership, lost their capacity to conduct large-scale operations. And therefore, ma'am, the fact that some organizations adapted does not prove the opposition's point, as by suggested by the question itself by the proposition, right? Now, ma'am, let us understand something more about terrorist organizations. They are like any other terrorist organization, right? They have resources, they have people, they have money. If you disrupt their operations, if you eliminate their leaders, if you destroy their training camps, if you seize their weapons and funding, then their ability to operate is damaged, right? Now, ma'am, some groups may try to reorganize or rebrand themselves, but that does not really mean that they are stronger. In fact, ma'am, a weakened, disrupt organization in a much worse position than a strong, organized one, right? We need to understand this first, right? Thank you.
A follow up to him.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah, so you cited the elimination of leaders. So you also quoted in your speak the elimination of bin Laden as a crippling down to Al Qaeda. Yet Al Qaeda still operates today, and ISIS emerged even stronger. So doesn't this prove that killing leaders doesn't kill the ideology, it just strengthened it because more youth got involved? What do you have to say about that?
All right,
Ma'am,
before
can I
you
answer that?
answer, just before you answer, Rajveer, is your question answered from the opposition? Are you satisfied with the answer?
Uh, Ma'am, I'm satisfied, but I'm partially satisfied because if you check the global terrorism data, it has been increasing day by day. If you take Al Qaeda, any Iran, small or big terrorism camps, they have been increasing day by day. They have been doing threats to the oppositions. Now, if you can see in the previous times, there was a large enmity between Iraq and Kuwait. So there are many terrorist camps used to oppose, and they're still opposing secretly, and they are doing some secret missions. And even the national security guards have not been told about that. So I think that it is partially answered because the military interventions should be occurred in a very good way. But there are many there are many terrorist camps that have been involved, and especially at the border. And so, why is the BSF not engaging? I'm not
Ma'am,
just
ma'am,
talking
ma'am,
about
ma'am,
India.
I'll answer that, ma'am. The question is well heard, right?
All right.
Okay, cool, ma'am. Ma'am, first we need to understand that. Sir, can I answer, please?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am, works. Okay. Ma'am, first we need to understand that follow-ups are basically questions based on the original questions, right? The question asked by the opposition member, by the proposition member, ma'am Arunima, right? Their question was completely different. Therefore, ma'am, first of all, follow-up shouldn't be granted over there, right? Secondly, ma'am, I never stated in my speech anything about Al Qaeda, right? But, ma'am, since we have brought that topic, first we need to understand the burden itself, right? First, the fall of Kabul happened, the system collapsed, prisons opened, and armed networks move fast. Now, ma'am, in that vacuum, at that time, what actually bogs terror back is not by speeches, but targeted counter-terrorism action, right? The UN Security Council, sorry, the UN Security Council itself laid the line with Resolution 2593 that Afghan soil cannot be a shelter or training ground for terrorists, which is the core responsible for counter-terrorism practice which is happening in this world, reducing terrorism in this world also. Now, ma'am, regarding the point about ISIS try to search Al Qaeda leadership, try to sit quiet in city safe houses, right? Your question which was there. But, ma'am, what cut the head was precise, right? Limited strike that removed Aman al Zawahiri. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right or not. In Kabul without leveling a block. That is the exact point the opposition keeps missing. Precision tools remove capability at the top and do not create more terrorists, right? They actually decapacitate a command and shrink operations. So, ma'am, the opposition blunder is a flip, right? When enforcement loosened, ISISK still spiked attacks. When pressure is sustained over the horizon surveillance, there were targeted removals, legal pressure, networks fragmented, spend time hiding, and also not recruiting or training. This is not theory, ma'am. This is how every command chain reacts when leadership and safe places are taken away by counter-terrorism measures. Thereby, at last, concluding my argument. Therefore, ma'am, the counter-terrorism efforts which the UN is doing, which every country is doing, thereby they are reducing terrorists and not promoting terrorism itself, right, ma'am? We need to understand this. Thank you.
All right, proposition. Anything you guys want to add?
Ma'am, that did not
Ma'am,
satisfy my answer at all. That was completely off track.
Okay,
My
ma'am, ma'am,
if
ma'am,
question
I can
talked
answer.
about,
ma'am,
All
ma'am,
yeah,
ma'am, can I
actually,
just
let
say
me
something?
let me let me
Can I just say
repeat.
something,
All
ma'am?
right,
Sorry, ma'am.
one second. Let's just, Arunima, can you just reframe your question because it was a little bit something different than what Rajveer was saying before. So you just say your question again, then the opposition can answer your question.
Yeah, okay. So basically, in your speech, the elimination of Bin Laden was mentioned. So Bin Laden is related to Al Qaeda. That's why I had mentioned Al Qaeda. So what I mean is, even after his elimination, Al Qaeda still operates today, and ISIS emerged even stronger. So doesn't this prove that killing leaders doesn't kill the ideology? I think I'm simple and clear.
All right,
Um, if, if I can add some points and then Ranad can give his answer back.
that works,
Ma'am,
Anand.
just one thing, ma'am.
Yeah,
Ma'am, considering that we just have only 2 minutes and 30 seconds left,
yeah.
considering that I had already answered their question, and considering also, I hope the executive board has marked my verbatim in my speech. I never mentioned anything about any fact, anything about Al Qaeda or anything about Bin Laden, right? I had never mentioned in my speech, right? Therefore, the question does not stand, ma'am. Could we please move with the feedback session itself, considering that the debate is
All
already
right.
over?
All right, then we'll just move forward with the feedback. I just think, Pranad, you are a very good debater. I would just like to say that you should speak a little slowly. Like your pace was very fast during your speech. I know you had a lot of things to say. Your speech was the only one that touched the 3 minutes mark. So maybe just keep your calm and then speak. That would be great. Otherwise, the research and that was very nice. And I really liked.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
No problem. I really liked Arunima's speech. The emotional factor and the speaking way was very good. And others, I really liked all of your speeches. All right, the meeting will end in 1 minute. I think that's all from my side. Anything, oh, thank you so much. And anything you guys want to say in the last, please go ahead.
Ma'am, who won the final debate?
Who won? I think it's between Arunima and Pranad. Is that how you speak your name, Pranad? Pranad? I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong.
He left the meeting.
Oh, he left the meeting. All right, then we'll just say it's either Arunima or Pranad because they were the ones who were the most active in this meeting. But all of you did great. And I hope you keep joining these daily debate meetings. I hope to see you again. You guys may leave. म्यूट है तू तू म्यूट है
भाई इतना बेवकूफ बच्चा बोले ना उसको सर मैं
मैं तो ऐसे हुई थी
भाई मैं तो और कुछ भी
भाई